Welcome to the second episode in the Ambition vs Talent Subaru Brumby build series. Previously, on episode 1, we learnt about the Brumby's strengths and weaknesses.
That's actually wrong wheel drive.
How the donor vehicle got its nickname.
Hence the nickname of the Outhouse, because it's a little bit of a shitbox if we're being honest.
Saw how much I've aged in the last 3 years.
What's the worst that can happen?
And witnessed a birth.
It has successfully given birth to an EJ25.
If you haven't watched that episode yet, I highly recommend watching it first, as it has all the background info you need. But now, let's crack on with the project.
Okay, so another day, back out in the shed again, working on stripping the outhouse. So in the meantime, I've done a little bit of admin type stuff that I didn't want to bore you with. So off camera, I've got the engine transferred onto the engine stand. I've sorted and labelled and packed away a whole heap of the parts that I stripped off the other day, and basically just had a little bit of a tidy up. So when I was young, I had it drilled into me that every job should start and finish with a clean workspace. I tend to get a little bit lazy on that, but it's amazing how you find the motivation again when you know the camera's going to be rolling. So yeah, there's that. Anyway, back to the outhouse. What are we going to get out of it today? I suppose we're going to focus on the drive line. So we've got the gearbox, driveshaft, diff, axles, hubs, all that sort of stuff. Brakes, if we get the time. Yeah, just start pulling bits off it. As previously mentioned, I'm not a mechanic, so this is not so much of a how-to as possibly more of a how not to. But anyway, we're going to give it a go, see how we get on, and see how many mistakes we can make. So, with that said, let's crack on with it.
So the wheels need to come off, which I do first before raising the vehicle fully on the hoist. With them out of the way, I want to drain the gearbox and diff oil so that I avoid making a mess later on. You would think that that would be easy enough to do at this point, wouldn't you?
That's not budging.
Okay, we're back to give this another go. So where are we at? I've given it a dose of CRC and left it alone for a little bit to think about its behaviour while I went inside and had a cuppa. So the good news is that I'm hydrated and caffeinated, ready to go. I've given it a couple of love taps with the ball peen just to see if the shock will break it loose. First attempt will be with the impact driver, nice fresh fully charged battery on it. If that doesn't work, then we'll be back with the breaker bar, but this time I have the tack handle extension. And if that all fails, then after that we'll be hitting it with fire. So let's give it all a go, eh? First up, impact driver. Hopefully this one does the trick. Too easy. There we have it. Okay, so I didn't need to get too serious with that after all. That is a bit of relief. That oil actually doesn't look too bad. Okay, so that's had a bit of time to drain while I go around and unleashed about half a can of CRC on every rusted bolt I can see. So I am going to refit the sump plug here, or the drain plug here now. Should have been replacing the washer really, but I don't have a spare one on hand, so the original's going back in there. But I will torque it to the correct spec, because better to remember that now than not remember it at all. Okay, where are we? Somewhere here. There we go. Cool. All right, so with that done, we can move on to the diff. Okay, so with the diff, you'll see I've already sprayed the points here. Now it is a good idea to break the the filler first for this very reason. Geez, that's in there tight. Give it a bit more cleanup and a bit more CRC, I think. Does that work quite well on the gearbox?
While that soaks in, I might as well get on to removing the drive shaft, as that needs to come out before I can remove either the diff or the gearbox. This is pretty straightforward. Just unbolt the flange on the diff, unbolt the centre bearing carrier and pull the shaft out of the back of the gearbox. It did need just a little bit of percussive persuasion to break it free from the diff flange, and being a two-piece shaft I used the transmission jack as an extra pair of hands while I got it loose. But with that removed, let's head back to the diff and give that another crack.
Okay, so the CRC's had a bit of time to soak in while the drive shaft got removed, so let's just give it another try. There we go. That was tight. That still is tight, actually. But yeah, this is why you should always remove the filler plug before you move the drain plug, because if you do it the other way around, you might not be able to fill it back up again. So, there we go. Oops, sorry guys. I think once I've got these out, I might have to give the threads a bit of a clean up. Let's try the ratchet. Oh, it's still too tight for me to turn it with that, I think. Oh no, here we go. Here we go. He's not going to win today. Okay, we'll leave that draining, but I think that was a good move. I'm very glad that I cracked off that filler plug while the diff was still in the car, because I think that made life a lot easier. Anyway, let's move on. Okay, while that diff's still draining, I thought I'll just show you something that I find quite interesting. So the one of the key differences between the Legacy and the Outback is obviously just the ride height. The Outback is lifted up a bit higher to give it a bit more off-road ground clearance. It's quite interesting the way they've done it. I don't have a Legacy here to compare it to, but you see the subframes. This is the rear one. We've got a little 1-inch spacer up above there, as we do above all the mounts. And so basically they've just lowered the subframe down, or perhaps more correctly, they've lifted the body up above the subframes. And you'll see they've done the same down here at the front. We've got little spacers just to lower this down, which of course brings the wheels down and pushes the body up and gets you a little bit extra ground clearance. Fairly simple trick. It's actually used as well by a number of off-road people to get a bit extra ground clearance, particularly in Subarus. But yeah, fairly basic way of doing it. Now I'm guessing there will also be differences in some of the suspension components. Definitely there'll be different shocks and springs, and of course the Outback runs bigger diameter tyres than the Legacy does as well, which all helps give it that extra ground clearance. But yeah, I thought I'd point that out before I rip anything else off the car. Okay, so I've given the threads a bit of a clean up with the wire wheel. We'll just give this guy a little torque up as well, just like we did with the gearbox. Make the noise. There we go. Done. Okay, so all cars have differentials, right? So when you're going around a corner, the wheels need to be able to turn at different speeds, because each wheel is traveling a slightly different radius around that curve. Now in most cars they have what's called an open differential, which is just the standard type, and the problem with an open differential is it sends the power through the path of least resistance. So if you have one wheel that's in mud and one wheel that's on tarmac, when you hammer the throttle, the wheel in the mud is just going to spin and you go nowhere. So what you can get is a type of differential called a limited slip, and that, when you detect slip, will start applying power to the other wheel. So it's not just going out through the wheel in the mud, it'll actually apply power to both the wheels, the one in the mud and the one on the tarmac. And I thought this was going to be an open differential, but it's not. And the way that you can tell is when you turn one wheel, the other wheel turns in the same direction. And you can verify that by holding the input on the diff and trying to turn it, and by hand I can't turn it. Whereas if I release it, it turns, and again both wheels go in the same direction. So when it's under load with the car will overcome that resistance, and if it detects too much slip, then of course it'll lock up and you get full power to both wheels. So that's really good. Now with Subarus, of course, you've got three differentials. You've got one in the back, and you've got one on the front, and then you've got one in between the two, because the two axles are going to turn at different speeds. It's not just each side that turns at different speeds. The front and the back will go at different speeds around the corners. Now, if you come with me, the centre diff is in here. Now this, I believe, does have a viscous limited slip in it. I believe the New Zealand ones all came with that, which is great. But it doesn't have a limited slip in the front. So if we do the same test up here, and we spin this wheel forwards, that wheel's going backwards, which signifies this is an open diff. So that's how you tell. Spin one wheel, and if they both go forwards, then it's a limited slip. If one wheel goes forward and the other one goes back, then it's open. And in fact, I can actually hold that one, and that'll be turning the input. And that's, again, the same as that test that we did at the back. So, why is that good? Well, that'll mean that when I'm off-road, I'll have power to at least 3 of the 4 wheels, which is excellent news. And I'm particularly happy that the second limited slip is on the back axle, because that's good for skids. So yeah, can't wait to get all this in the Brumby and take it down to the paddock and go do some donuts. Okay, we're here at the back again. This diff, got to get this bad boy out. We need a few other bits and pieces while we're back here. Want to take the axles out. We're going to have the brakes and everything eventually. Don't need hubs and stuff because they won't fit the Brumby. I've got another plan for that. But one thing that's in the back of my mind as I'm pulling this apart is I still have to be able to put wheels on this thing and roll the shell back out once I finish stripping it. So in the interest of not making too much work for myself, while I'd normally pull the axles out by starting at the outer side and working my way in, Diff's got to come out. So I don't know whether this will work or not, but I figure why not just drop the diff out and then pull the axles out the inwards way, and then I don't have to reassemble anything on the outside. So hopefully that works. If it does, I think there's only 4 bolts, which I've given a dose of CRC, so let's give it a go. Rattle gun.
And of course it was around about this point that the camera decided it's going to turn itself off. The joys of technology. Anyway, my cunning plan did work as intended. I was able to lower the diff and remove the axles on the way down, so happy days there. Moving forward to the gearbox again, off comes the clutch slave cylinder and other connections. We're getting close now.
Just about ready to get the gearbox out of here. I've got the drive shafts out, I've got the gearbox nicely stabilised on a gearbox jack, transmission jack, strapped on with a tie down ratchet strap just in case. I don't think I'm going to need it, but it should be helpful just in case. Meanwhile, back here, yeah, I'd hope to take all these bits off with it, but for now I've just kind of disconnected them and left them up out of the way. They're obviously the gearbox linkages as well as a stabiliser for it. Had a couple of bolts here that were a little bit tricky to get out, but by backing off the engine mounts or transmission mounts underneath there, I was able to get enough room to get the bolts out. So I think these are all now loose and ready to go. I've just cracked the cross brace or cross member bolts, so it's ready for me, I think, just to undo those and hopefully just lower array.
And as predicted, it dropped out nice and easily. We can tick that box. And yes, that pun was intended.
Okay, with most of the driveline out of the car now, getting close to having all the important stuff out. Holy moly, that's on tight. But there's still a lot more that the car can contribute. So what I'm working on now is just getting everything from the to do with the brakes, everything to do with the hubs and stuff that I'm going to need to reuse. Here we go. Yeah, that was on there tight. But to add to the challenge, somehow I've got to get the car off the hoist and out of the shed. So what I'm going to start by doing is taking off everything that doesn't need to be on the car in order to have it rolling, and that's going to include brakes. So hopefully she doesn't get away from us going down the hill or something when I'm wheeling it out. But I want to reuse all the brakes on the Brumby. Got my little oil pan here to catch the brake fluid when it comes out. There we go. And yeah, so I take those off. I need obviously calipers, the discs. I'm going to use off the front, I'm going to use the hubs, the uprights. Probably won't use these. I think these are too big to go underneath the Brumby or into the Brumby arch, if you will. Don't need control arms, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, there's a couple of bits to come off at once I've actually wheeled it out of the shed. And just to make that a little bit easier, because I'm going to have the car up on jacks when I do that, things like the ball joints, tie rod ends, that sort of stuff, I'm going to try and crack those off now and just leave those loose so that, yeah, hopefully it rolls okay, but when it comes time to strip the rest of the bits off it, they're already cracked while they're here, they're accessible, I can get power tools on them, all that sort of stuff. So that's the rough plan. So on we go. Not those ones. Hooray for ratcheting spinners. All right, one caliper. This disc has come off nice and easily. Often you have to put two bolts in there and tighten them just to pop it off the hub, but this one's come off very nicely. Okay, so all of that has to stay on there for now. Slight flaw in my plan. Puller's not going to fit on with that in there, so I might have to take the hub off. I was kind of trying to avoid that. Let's do the bottom one at least. Righty tighty, lefty loosey. Can't get either of them off with the backing plate on there. Oh well. Let's take the backing plate off. Wonder how easily the hub's going to come off. Probably not. I'd say it's obvious that's not been on there too long. That's a win.
With the hub and backing plate removed, it didn't take long to crack off the ball joints, then refit the hub. Up next is the engine bay. Everything I keep gets a label before I yank it out, and there is a lot of labelling to do. Then all the clips holding the wiring loom in place need to be carefully pried out. I want to salvage as many of those clips as I can, as I'll reuse a lot of them in the Brumby. This slows down progress quite a bit because they can be a bit fiddly to remove without snapping them, but the ones where you can get to the back aren't too bad, and overall I probably managed to save about 2/3 of the clips, which should be plenty for the Brumby. There's a section of the wiring loom from the fuse box that runs through the inner guards. This doesn't take too long to free up, ready to be pulled through once the interior has been stripped. So next up, onto the interior.
Okay, here we are inside the car. So I've got to get all the wiring and everything out of it. I've got everything out from behind the dash. Obviously to get there I've got to strip a lot of stuff out. I've taken out the front seats to give myself a little bit more room, and I'm going to start here and work my way forwards because that's generally the way Subaru operates. So yeah, I'm just going to crack into it.
half time, change sides. I need to do more yoga, or any yoga maybe. Sparrow, you're messing with my head here. Can't you just be consistent with the way you put these things together? Well, my attempts to get the kick panel out have proven unsuccessful. They were thwarted by the OBD2 port, which I can't work out how you unplug the port off the trim. That's okay. He can stay there for all he likes. I'll come back to him. He won't win yet. Well, he's won for now, but I'll get him back. Oh, I need to put a bell on that Vivid. Where'd he go? Am I sitting on it? I'm sitting on it. At least it was lying flat. Gamma water, figure it out. Probably best I do that. No. Stubby Bob, where are you? Come here, my friend. Good grief. Oh man, what fun we have. There's a whole bunch of people screaming at their screens right now going, you forgot the bolt at the back. Ah, that's what I'm missing. That's what I'm missing. Okay. Just have to let the dog see the bone. Now we're out. Oh. Success. Success. Okay. Making progress. I need a bigger shed. Maybe I should just be ripping this entire carpet out. That might make life easier. Might make life less comfortable as well. Oh. More money. Glad you're watching from that camera, because the other camera's got nothing in it but a view of my butt. I'm going to need the steering to get the car out of the garage, aren't I? Okay, here we are, back in the outhouse. Whole new day. Hopefully today I'm going to get all this finished. It's already taken a lot longer than I thought it was going to. I thought I'd have this stripped out pretty quickly, but it's proven pretty fiddly. Arguably, I'm taking a lot more than I need to. I possibly could have just chopped a lot of these wires, but I'm going to try and save as much as I can, just to make sure I have absolutely everything I need, that I have plenty of spares, yeah, that I've harvested everything that I can off this car. So, so for today, we want to get the wiring harness from the front back. That should all be nearly ready to go. I've just got a couple of things to pull through. I've got a loom up there that goes up to the fuse box that I've got to pull through. It is all disconnected at the other end. I've got these, which I think are the wheel speed sensors, to pull out. They're already disconnected underneath when we took out the brakes and stuff. So yeah, that bit should be all pretty easy. And then I can get the harness backwards, get the crash bar, dash bar, whatever it's called, get that reinstalled and this back up supported on it so that it's hanging under its own weight, not resting on an axle stand. And then I can move on to the boot and hopefully get the last few bits out of there. And what's after that? I suppose I've just got to slap wheels on it and roll it out. So yeah, that'll be a good moment. So let's just crack on and get into it. Okay, I might as well start with these guys at the back here, because they're going to be easy, I reckon. Famous last words.
So that's our wire that goes, or our loom that goes to the fuse box. So that's good. I think that's the last bit to come out of there. So hopefully all this stuff can come over the steering wheel. Up and over. Look at that. You see all these wires? This is insane. That is everything we need from the front for the wiring. I suppose now I've got to strip everything out of the boot. Okay, really, it's getting pretty warm in here. Alright, to the boot. Let's see what we got here. Pull up. Yeah. That, I believe, is the harness completely undone. So let's drag that bad boy out. It feels like an awful lot of weight. Here's my little friend. Alright, so this is my mate Mickey, named after Mickey Thompson, the famous racer. Yeah, he's got a lot of nicknames. The Ginger Mick, the Ginger Bear, the Red Rascal, Doofus. Yeah, he gets a lot of nicknames, but we love him to bits, even though he drops hair everywhere. But he likes to be involved, so you're probably going to see him hanging out a little bit and this little ginger face popping up in the occasional frame. But yeah, there's my boy. Just wants to be loved. Yeah, he generally thinks that everything is for him. It's all here for his entertainment. So yeah, if you see him popping up every now and again, that's who he is, and that's what he does. Hey, Scallywag. All right, anyway, back into it. Okay, I thought I'd just give you all a little bit of an update on where I'm at. As you can see, the Outback is looking pretty empty. There's not a lot left in there anymore. Basically, all that's on there now are the bits that either I don't need as part of the shell or that have to be there in order for me to roll the old girl out. But yeah, in the meantime, where are we at with the shed? Well, the short answer is it's a mess. We've got door cards and stuff around here. We've got rear seat, we've got the gearbox, we've got the diff, we've got a couple of bins full of parts over there. We've got a radiator and aircon condensers, handbrake, gear lever assemblies, axles, drive shaft. Even the poor old Brumby is being used for storage. We've got the boot mat, the rear bumper, stack of tyres and rims. We've got the carpet, liners, mufflers. We've got an engine over here, tow bar under there with some trim panels. We've got under trays here along with the stereo. We've got the bag of trim panels here. I've got another one just like that I've already taken out of the shed. There's the wiring loom. As you can see, there is an awful lot to that. That's going to be fun. And then all across the bench, everything from bulbs and trim clips through to bolts. We've got brakes, fuel pumps, dash, mirrors, seat belts, release cables and solenoids. We've got the seats over here, the hood liner, grille, all that sort of fun stuff. So as you can see, there's a lot that goes into a car, and once you actually pull it all out, it's incredible just how many components there are in a car. But anyway, we're just about there. Just got to get this old girl back on her wheels and she can go out.
Obviously then I'm going to need to have one hell of a sort out in the shed, get everything organised, get things tidied up and so on, and then we can wheel the Brumby in and the fun stuff begins, so can't wait. But one step at a time. First thing is, let's get some wheels on and get rid of the old girl. And here we go, my very last drive in the mighty Outhouse. Goodbye, trusty steed. You're a far better car than I ever expected, and you've been the key that unlocks this whole project, and for that, I salute you. Coming up on the next episode, I make some great progress on preparing the Brumby. The Brumby is fighting me less than what the Outback did. And start getting excited.
Everybody knows, no glove, no love.
Perhaps a little too excited.
She's a good girl.
Before reality strikes back.
Obviously this was one of those examples of where my ambition outweighed my talent.
Stay tuned, there's still plenty more to come on the Brumby Build series.